There are countless myths and stereotypes about Northern Cyprus. For some people, this place might seem like a best place on earth, a true paradise. For others, it might seem like a worst nightmare they cannot wait to escape from, vowing never to return. Today, we're going to talk about upsides and downsides of Northern Cyprus. The good, the bad, the what's on earth going on here moments. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding whether Northern Cyprus is the best dream place for you or whether it's your personal horror story. Today, I'm going to start with one of the biggest aspects that was important to me when I was choosing Northern Cyprus, and that's a British education. Very surprisingly, but Northern Cyprus actually has a very decent British education with British curriculum at a very affordable prices. Even though the prices have surged for educational fees over the past 4 years, for anywhere from £4,000 to £8,000 to £10,000 per annum, it's still one of the most affordable educational systems across European Union. On another side, if we're talking about higher education institutions such as universities, it's not on the greatest level. Majority of the universities in Northern Cyprus, and trust me, there are so many of them, they are not worldwide recognized. And having diploma from that university is not going to take you anywhere. There are exceptions such as Eastern Mediterranean University or Final University, for example, that have the accreditation from the European Union universities. To be more specific, you have to look into a particular program and maybe particular faculty within a specified period of time. Let's say graduating from a final university with a particular diploma, you can actually pay a cheaper price for your education, but at the same time, that diploma is going to be valid in the UK because that university has the accreditation for a particular faculty. That's where exceptional opportunity comes into place with a low cost for the education. But again, most of the time, 99% of the time, the education diploma is not going to be valid elsewhere other than Northern Cyprus or Turkey. Financial freedom. Northern Cyprus is a country that's outside of European Union jurisdiction, hence why it's outside of financial control. Outside of any financial control in the world, actually, I would say. So in here, you can freely buy properties with crypto. In here, there's no control over cash deposits, bank transfers, or even crypto activities. That's why remote workers, as well as crypto enthusiasts, feel themselves very comfortable over here. And my dear friends, to offset the financial freedom, let's talk about inconsistency of regulations and laws in this country. Tennessee is a young country, and the government was formed in 1983, which means that this year is going to be 42 years. Hence why Tennessee is still developing institutional structure. As an example, I can tell you what we can see that's going on with the regulations on the property acquisition, right, by foreigners. The law is inconsistent. There was a lot of changes. Now the deadlines are being extended, probably indefinitely for the next few years to come, right? So the government releases the law, but it cannot control it. It cannot implement it. There is not enough workforce. We see things like that on everyday basis, and which is fine, things are being worked out and nobody has fined yet, and probably nobody will be. But at the same time, it's like, does it cause some sort of inconvenience? Yes, it does. But, we know where we are, and that's why we are acting very tolerant towards it. Northern Cyprus is a perfect destination to fly into, and I'm talking about cheap travel options. Do you know that flights directly to Larnaca from many European countries can actually cost you anything from 20 euros? Ironically, the taxi drive from the airport would actually cost you more than the actual flight. On the other hand, there is no direct flights to Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus other than via Turkey, right? And that creates inconvenience for tourists because that adds extra stop to their travel and extra expenses. I would like to note, though, that a new airport was built only in the last year. New airport is actually 3 times bigger than the previous ones and is only used 20% of the actual capacity. If Northern Cyprus becomes recognized, then we actually have the facilities to accommodate new flights coming in directly from other countries. And by the way, the good thing that I didn't mention is the perfect time zone. Northern Cyprus is very conveniently located in very close to Central Europe, meaning that if you come here with remote work, right, you can be working here with no time difference to the time zone head company is located at, right? That's in terms if we compare it to, let's say, Bali or Thailand, where it's inconvenient to have Zooms or calls with the, working hour schedule of your company with the headquarters in European country. Deadlines are flexible. People are very approachable, and any sort of issue can be solved just by communication and a big smile on your face. Let me give you an example. Let's say you acquired a property that's under construction and you have your payment plan. Neither of the developers, at least not in my case, have penalized the buyers for the delays of their payments according to the payment schedule, okay? You can always get an extension for a month or two or even 5 with no penalties being imposed, even though you have your contract with terms and conditions where you actually have those penalties stated. Still, developers don't usually fine their investors. Another perfect example would be tax payments. Since the law has been introduced with 12.5% title deed transfer tax, a lot of people don't have that sort of money in a small span of time. So the government has introduced a payment plan for the taxes. Right now, you can pay your 12.5% of taxes on your property that you purchased over a 12 months period. So aside of the fact that Northern Cyprus is very flexible and people are approachable and deadlines can be extended, we are not so flexible when it comes to traffic fines, okay? Due to the fact that the population of Northern Cyprus has increased drastically over the past few years, the amount of accidents on the roads has increased drastically as well. To prevent that from happening, police department had to increase the fines to prevent accidents from happening. Fine for drink driving exceeds 15,000 euros now. Don't drink drive, please, not in Northern Cyprus. You can do it anywhere across the globe because Northern Cyprus is the leader in the fine amount for drink driving nowadays. If you are texting while driving, or let's say you're eating or even smoking IQOS, you can be fined for up to 1,000 euros. Northern Cyprus is the safest place on earth. And I think just because over the decades, because there's virtually have been no crime whatsoever, police have so much time on their hands that if anything does happen, they catch the thieves or criminals the same day, the same spot. It literally takes them no time. One important fact is that police has access to every single camera on the island. I didn't believe that until I actually saw evidence myself. I'm not going to tell you the story, but I literally saw a police accessing a camera outside of the street that belonged to another company in a matter of seconds. I do believe that one of the reasons why it's so safe over here is because there is no refugees, there is no illegal immigration to this country. Why? Because they basically don't get any protection, don't get any benefits, and of course, nobody would want citizenship of Northern Cyprus because it doesn't get you anywhere. So the only people who do come to this island would normally have to have a lot of money, or they will be highly qualified professionals, or workers that are supplied with a working visa for low-paid jobs. For any resident of any megapolis, it's difficult to imagine, but here in Northern Cyprus, you can actually work during nighttime by yourself when no one is around. Even when there is no lights around or cameras, you can feel yourself very safe because no one is going to approach you ever. Open houses, open cars, believe me, nobody is going to touch any of your belongings. Northern Cyprus is full of bureaucratic issues. Oh my goodness, anything to process takes ages. Don't even try to go and sue someone because it can take up to 5 years, which is absolutely regular time span for any court case. As well as that, simple things like after you buy the property, you apply for the permission to get your title deed transferred into your name. But you know what? That process is going to take you up to 2 years. So you own the property, but you don't technically own the property because you're waiting for the permission to come through to transfer the title deed into your name. Even when it comes to business, let's say you operate some sort of service, and once you open the company, you had a list of things that you're going to provide people with, right? And let's say after a year's time, you've decided to add an additional service to it. Guess what? You have to go to court to ask for an official permission. Don't expect the process to be straightforward. It's going to be quite complicated. So things like that do upset people. Not everyone is going to be tolerant to that, but you know what? It's Northern Cyprus, it's island. Things are very slow over here. One of the reasons why I've picked Northern Cyprus after relocating from Canada was the residency application process. It's very easy and straightforward process for you to get a residency permit in here. As far as you have money, as far as you have a passport of some sort of country, you are sorted. There are a few ways of getting residency permit in here. First one would be based on the property ownership. The property can be of any value, but it has to be registered and taxes have to be paid. So you would need your documents proving that you own the property. You would need your passport. You would need your bank account with about 15,000 on it, euros or pounds or dollars, doesn't really matter. And you would need your birth and marriage certificates for your family. If you don't own the property, you can easily get the residency based on high income. In that sort of case, you would need an agreement for rental of the property of minimum half a year term. Plus, you would need your bank account with about 40K on it to prove that you have enough sufficient funds to live throughout the year. And as well as that, of course, you would need a passport and birth and marriage certificates for your family. That is it. You don't need anything else. And of course, after moving to any of the European countries, especially in my own experience, with a pile of documents that thick, it's a very straightforward process. Even though to get a temporary residence is very easy and straightforward in Northern Cyprus, to get a permanent residency is not as easy. The only way I can think of right now you can get a permanent residency is to actually get married to a local Cypriot, whether it's a man or a woman. And that's going to take you about a couple of years' time to prove the marriage ties and, to get your passport. Until recent changes in government regulations, there was another pathway. Before working for 7 years non-stop in Northern Cyprus, officially you could have gotten white kimlik based on your work experience. But this pathway has been closed right now because according to the law now, after continuous work for 4 years, you must leave the country for a few months. So that breaks down the pathway to 7 years basically. And of course, based on your work experience, you are not able to get permanent residency or citizenship anymore. Climate and nature. Everybody knows that Northern Cyprus has the best climate you can find in the whole wide world. We have about 10 months practically of summer a year, right? And only a couple of months of winter. So our swimming season starts somewhere in March or beginning of April, and it lasts all the way until the end of November. I mean, some enthusiasts, of course, find themselves very comfortable swimming during winter time, like months like December or February. I would say we have about 15 rainy days per year altogether. Also, the natural produce, if we talk about that. Technically speaking, use of pesticides and preservatives is strictly prohibited in Northern Cyprus. I mean, there is a little allowance for it, but there is this very strict control over it. And I know the authorities, special authorities, they do conduct weekly check on all the produce that's being imported or produced in here on amount of preservatives and pesticides being used. If the level of pesticides had exceeded the allowance, that produce is being demolished, thrown away, anything and everything, but it's not being put into the use. The farm that has produced that particular product with exceeded pesticides gets a really bad fame, and it's not something local producers are looking forward to. You would think that all year around sunshine can be used for the renewable energy. That's not the case in Northern Cyprus, my dear friends. As much sun as we have and as much as we can use the potential of it to produce a free, clean energy, in Northern Cyprus, this process is being slightly complicated because of the infrastructure. Before, some years ago, when population wasn't as big on the island, solar panels were widely used. Whoever could afford it, had no difficulties in installing them into their housing. The way it worked, you had the solar panels, but you didn't have the batteries. And of course, the solar energy, the excess energy that you don't use, it was sent back into the KIPTEC network. That way you were getting a credit for excess energy and you could have used it in the winter months when sun is not out there. In the recent years, because of the inflow of the rich population and, people who would actually afford the solar panels, the infrastructure was not able to handle the amount of energy that was coming back into the net. So the government now made it very difficult to get the permission to install the solar panels and to send the energy back to the KIPTEC. I mean, it's still possible, but it would cost you quite a bit of money. Huge historical heritage, endless places to go and see and visit. Myself, living here for 3 years, I haven't even seen half of the historical places that I was planning to see. Castle of Karenian, Belapais Abbey, St. Hilarion Castle, Salamis Ancient City, as well as Kantara Castle. All those exciting places are waiting for you. As many places as here to see, unfortunately, there is no public transport that goes towards them. I mean, there is a public transport in Northern Cyprus, especially if we talk about west of Karenia. You will get those minivans going occasionally, not by the schedule. Trust me, not by the schedule. And not necessarily they have to stop if you're standing there and waiting for them. Are they convenient? No, they're not really. They're cheap? Yes, they are cheap. But then, they do go on a regular base, but not as often as we might want them to, okay? And you would expect to see them anywhere from Lapta to central of Girne. And of course, public transport would be active the same way in places like Nicosia. However, unfortunately, if we take rural areas like Esentepe or Gaziveren, or any other regions of Northern Cyprus, you would not have a public transportation in there. If we talk about regions like Ischele, there is a minivan that goes along Ischele all the way to Famagusta about 3 times a day. If I had to rely on public transport, I would rather get a bike, but preferably you need to buy a car. What would I like to say in conclusion, my dear friends, is that when I was picking a place for relocation, there were a few important factors for me, right? When I came to Northern Cyprus, and the reason why I picked Northern Cyprus in the first place. Of course, it was British education for my son. It was a sun all year round. It was natural produce. It was low cost of living, easy residency, seaside, okay? So those are the main factors that I was looking for. Have I found them in Northern Cyprus? 100% yes. Another one was safety, by the way. I forgot to mention safety is another aspect that I was looking forward to. Absence or very limited presence of drugs. That would be another important aspect. Again, why? Because of the younger generation. All those benefits of Northern Cyprus actually offset all the negatives that I see in it. Yes, of course, prices have risen over the past 2 years, not only on the property, but, day-to-day life when we talk about insurance, bills, food, etc., as well as school fees. But still, prices are rising everywhere across the globe, and we can't really say that Northern Cyprus has to be an exception, right? The fact that the regulations have changed in regards to property acquisition, yes, I had to pay 12.5% instead of 3%. Did it upset me? Yes, of course, I did get upset, but did it change my mind about Northern Cyprus? No, it didn't. I've spoken about renewable energy. It doesn't touch base me, but the fact that we practically have no bins around and there is no recycling things. Yeah, and that's something that really has to be implemented in Northern Cyprus in the years to come with the, constant increase in the population. So that would be one of the biggest things that are negative about this island. But again, will it change? I'm sure it will. For people who like cosmopolitan type of cities, this is not for you. This is a village type of style. In here, you will see, especially if you're talking about the northern coastline, it's a village. There is a lot of greenery. Roads are not perfect. You don't get sidewalks everywhere. Truly, it's not everywhere you can get around with a bicycle. But, it is what it is. It doesn't have to be a perfect place to be, right? It's just Northern Cyprus. If you're a shopaholic and you're obsessed with malls, shopping centers, facilities like that, then this is not the place for you. Our regular shopping mall, aside of one that's located in Famagusta, which is a city mall, but other than that, any regular shopping mall would consist of about 5 shops in it. So I would say if you like to shop, then yeah, you have to look elsewhere. So have you decided if this place is perfect for you or you have something to comment on? Please leave your comments below and happily answer them. If you have any sort of question about Northern Cyprus, please feel free to reach out to me. I will happily answer. Which of the points is of biggest importance to you? Please share your opinion in the comments. Aside of the fact that I love whole of Northern Cyprus, I still have 10 best spots that I love to go to. If you'd like to see what they are and get the catalog from me, can you please write me a private message and I will send you the information.